Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know The Penguin, Season 1, Episode 4. My name is Grace Leeder, but of course, I'm not alone. I'm here with the one and only Mike Bloom. Mike, how you doing?
Very good, Grace. Excited to tack into an episode of The Penguin that was, for lack of a better term, an absolute gas.
Oh, yeah, gas. We were talking about gas. I thought a weird cliffhanger this episode, and we didn't really. We'll talk about it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say. Listen, we're gonna spoil this thing
Yeah.
right off the top. I think it just, as I perennially do, have lost on the brain. But I'm like, Sophia went the full Ben Linus.
That's right.
She did to her family what Ben did to the Dharma Initiative back in the day.
That's right. Well, we're going to get to the episode. The name of the episode, Mike, that I tried to pronounce just before we came on and then knew I would butcher it again. And so then chickened out of saying it is
Cent'anni. It's an Italian toast that
Yeah.
basic's means like wealth, prosperity for 100 years.
Yeah.
AKA Sophia's sentence in Arkham times 10.
Right. I've heard that before. I'm not from an Italian family. So, but you said we're going to spoil the episode, which we're absolutely going to do. And if you want to be spoiled on how many podcasts you can get from We Know Scripted TV, right, Mike? Right?
I love that. That's very good.
So
I didn't know. I initially took it the first way of like, spoiler alert, it's 7. Like, is that the spoiler that you're providing?
No, I was gonna say if you want to be spoiled with riches, you can subscribe to the We Know Scripted TV podcast feed, and you'll get all of our podcasts here: the Tastemakers, TV for Real, the weekend program, all of the full recaps we're doing, and anything else that hits your feed. You and Josh are doing a Lost rewatch podcast for newbies, so there's that as well. So much you can get, but you have to be subscribed, so you know the podcast will be in the feed in your podcast app. We're also on YouTube. Ratings and reviews are helpful as well, and tell a friend. That's what I like to tell people, Mike. Tell a friend.
Absolutely. I guess you could tell a family member because I'm assuming you're in a better spot than Sophia is with hers. I mean, Grace, this is something that we have been jockeying for, and color me a little shocked. I mean, maybe not completely, because you and I talked about how, despite maybe the pace within the episodes being a bit slower, the actual plot in these episodes is barreling forward, much like Oz's car. And here we get it, where I thought we would have saved the big mystery as to, okay, how did Oz betray Sophia? How did Sophia wind up in Arkham, etc.? Would have been like a penultimate flashback in a more conventional TV show. Here we get it to essentially end Act 1, the first half of the series.
Well, this is obvious why we did this episode, right? This is very limited Colin Farrell in the Penguin.
Yeah, actually, it was meant to be episode 7, but Colin Farrell got so tired of the makeup that they said, okay, you know what? You know what? Actually, we won't write you out of this episode. We're going to try to make you look 10 years younger by giving you a side part instead of a comb over.
Less prosthetics.
Slightly less prosthetics.
Yeah. No, he's in this episode. Just a joke. No, I agree. They basically, we ended last episode with Vic arriving to save the day, running over one of the Maroni bodyguards, Oz getting in and telling him to leave Sophia. And then we begin this episode by like moving the camera over, being like, we'll follow Sophia. That's what we'll do this episode.
Like, now we know why. That it's less so like, oh my God, Oz is such a jerk for leaving his new partner behind. It's more so, oh, Oz got. And basically was quite literally playing both sides. This is the first time in the season that he is quite literally between a Falcone and a Maroni. And in the moment just shows how much of a frickin' weasel he is.
No, he's a penguin.
Yeah, well, yeah, just as slippery, where like Nadia comes forward and is like, oh, look at you going behind my back making this drug. It's like, no, I was actually making it the whole time for you. Yeah, don't you worry, Sophia, I can explain later. And so, yeah, this is sort of like what we leave Oz on for now, including in the present. We're not going to see Oz until next episode, and instead we carry forward with Sophia. And Grace, you had said that, like, you know, our unholy trinity of Oz, Sophia, and Vic each kind of had highlight episodes in the first 3 episodes, but man, if that was a highlight of Sophia back in episode 2, this is like taking the highlighter and coloring in the whole page, because we get an entire 2 set of timelines dedicated to the plight of this woman.
Yeah, we are going to flash back to. They all do a thing in this episode where they flash back within a flashback.
Which is one of my least favorite things. Luckily, it's only done a couple of times. That I was a little nervous when we started getting into the Russian nesting dolls of it all.
Well, one of them, it feels like a genuine flashback. One of them is a full dream sequence. Seems like a nightmare, in fact. But yeah, so we flash back to Sophia, how she sort of basically. you might be wondering how I ended up here.
Yeah.
Which is,
how I
yeah.
found my mother, if you
Yeah.
will, which the answer is dead.
Yeah. And Mike, I've been hypothesizing that Sophia's being framed for murder that she says she didn't do. I definitely thought we would find out that Sophia did do the murders,
But
that
for a good reason, yeah.
but for a good reason. Nope, wrong. Her dad did the murders for a bad reason.
Yeah. And so I do want to, pat you on the back that, like, yeah, the whole narrative of, like, the Sophia's not really the hangman, you were definitely correct about. And I will say, I felt a couple of different things between the two halves of this episode. As we were wearing through the first half here, the first thing I was thinking was like, are we just gonna stay in Arkham for the rest of the episode? We have so much time left. Are we gonna watch this poor woman get, like, tortured and beaten down mentally and physically over and over again?
A good month to release the Penguin, I think. It's got it pretty spooky in there. I don't like it.
Yeah, like, you could really, once they let all the prisoners out of Arkham, they could just make a haunted house out of it, and it would just sell boffo bucks. But the other thing that I was thinking was, I had a couple of disparate thoughts when we have this revelation about the fact that Sophia was not the hangman, that Carmine Falcone basically set his daughter up as the fall person for all of these killings he was doing, that I also assume were not necessarily done in, like, a serialized manner. It was just more so like he was doing shady criminal shit and just killed all the various women that he was having trysts with. Maybe that's something else we'll find out, or maybe it just gets left in the past. But on the one hand, I was like, okay, this is interesting. But at the same time, we talk about how with Oz specifically, and how it sort of is the modern day colorization of these shows, that we love the anti-heroes, the complicated nuances that lie in watching people do bad things, but they find rationalizations as to why they do it. And so I was feeling a certain way, admittedly, of like, I don't know how I feel about if Sophia is just a completely innocent woman who's just a victim of the system and the patriarchy. If she didn't even kill anybody, then that maybe almost makes me feel less compelled about the character, because it doesn't mean she has any metaphoric or literal blood on her hands. That obviously changes completely in the second half. The second that she kills Magpie and basically tells them, like, yeah, I'm the killer that you made me to be. And then obviously culminating in this big climactic moment at the end where she does become the mass murderer like she had been painted a decade ago. Then it really started clicking for me. So I am grateful to the show for kind of subverting my expectations, because, yeah, as odd as it is to say, the idea of just, like, Sophia being wrongfully incriminated and imprisoned for murder she didn't commit for 10 years, and, like, she's just a woman who had this foisted upon her and that's it, kind of made me feel less invigorated by the character.
Interesting. I think that for me, the reason why I think that this makes a ton of sense is that I think it fits within the theme of the show, which is, what we're doing here is not a traditional, like, here's the superhero, here's the villain. And oftentimes, like, the idea to explore a lot of these characters, I went to watch Joker Folie à Deux, and this does less than Joker does, the original movie, but is like, let's go explore how that happened. But in a typical superhero movie, like, they kind of already tend to be a pretty baked character, right? Like, it's often like, if you think about, like, I know this is a DC show, but I'll go to Marvel, which is like, you think about, like, we get a scene where it's like the bad guy does a bad thing that, like, sets us up on where they're going. And, like, even like Thanos, like, he's pretty like he's set in the thing that he's going to do pretty much by the time we need him to be the big villain that we're facing. Now we're doing the villain show, and we're looking at the Penguin, and how does the Penguin, he is not the idea of this Penguin is that he is not the Penguin.
Right, he's not the Penguin we know.
Yeah, at least yet, right? He is not the this is a different version of the Penguin, but also he is not the Penguin that shows up who is already the mob crime, but, like, he is not as powerful as he would be if he was to, like, be in a movie where he's up against Batman, right? And so we're watching, how did that person, come to be? That's the interest, I think, that the showrunners of the show have in exploring the Penguin. And so we're essentially going to do that same thing with Sophia Falcone, who, I went to look up a lot of the comic book stuff about Sophia, and it's pretty minimal. There's not a lot in there. She definitely was doing serial killer stuff, but in the comic, she was killing members of the Gotham Police Department. Like that's what she was doing. So they've taken a completely different approach to the. I mean, so far she is not serial killing. So far she has been like given the nickname as a cover up for what her father did. I don't know. I like it. Because what I think that the show is doing is basically saying to these characters that I think you can most attribute right now to Oz and Sophia, not so much Vic, and we'll see where that goes, but is how do these people become the thing that everybody says they are before they are that thing? Like how are they made into the monster that people perceive them to be? Like when Johnny's in bed last episode and being like, well, you listen to this guy, he's the schmuck, he's the Penguin,
Right.
And eventually I think we're gonna find a time in this episode we get some of like, don't call him the Penguin, like that's don't say it to his face, like don't say it. I would get to a point where probably Oz is maybe gonna call himself the Penguin,
Yeah, he takes it as like a badge of honor. No, I completely agree with you on that. And that's why, again, like it got me by the second half is this idea that I think initially I had been misled under the idea of like, okay, so Sophia isn't the hangman. Like it's just a label that was foisted upon her. And so she is someone who wouldn't hurt a fly, as she was kind of like personified a little bit. Now, look, who's to say, if things went the way that they did and she ends up inheriting the Falcone family, which is also very fun. Grace, you thought that with House of the Dragon being over, that you had gotten out of the weeds in terms of like a jockeying for power within a kingdom led by a patriarch, but here we are, and so she is sort of like raising King's Landing to the ground at the end here, sort of like blowing up the wildfire. But I was very happy with, again, towards the tail end of this episode, where, like you said, it's this idea of kind of like resisting the box that you've been put in until you realize how powerful that box can be, and using it to your advantage of like, listen, I have said for a decade that I am not the hangman. If you all want to say I am, great. I'll be the hangman then. And you're all going to hang for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I think the show is trying to. That's the story that they're trying to tell. I think is not a fully fledged hangman. This is how Sophia becomes the hangman, even if she sort of had the moniker from they're sort of playing with that idea of like, the hangman from the comic books, if like I didn't, but if you do, and then sort of see how that happens to a version, like whether or not we actually ever get this, but that you could see like Sophia then fits into a movie with Robert Pattinson, or we return to see Oz Cobb in the Batman 2, and although he was in the first movie, he's in there for kind of like 2 scenes, and he's really kind of like a henchman guy, and then and then he gets some information, he gives up some information. That's how we get Oz in the first movie, and this is just building sort of the mythos to them and how they become who they are. So I think I disagree a little. It sounds like you said you feel like you had differing thoughts between the first half and the second half, and that you ended up liking the second half more than you liked the first half. Is that right?
Yeah, because I think I had been under the assumption of, okay, they're really just going to paint Sophia as a victim of circumstance without like really perpetuating anything. And then by the end, to your point, it's this idea of her deciding to get her hands dirty and not fully embracing, to your point, but definitely more embracing, okay, if you want to keep calling me a killer, I guess I'm going to kill people now.
Yeah, so my thing is not that I didn't like I liked the second half. I really didn't like the ending of the episode.
Interesting.
The visual of her being in the gas mask is very cool. It's
very Saltburn to me.
Yeah, it's very good. I just felt that like nothing happened, and I'm so like I think I'm realizing how much sometimes I need the like storytelling trope, or like I need. I've watched so much TV that I'm like, and I have this big thing I do that is like a detriment to me which is like I watch a scene and be like, oh my god, if more of the movie was like this, this would be a great movie. It's like they didn't make the movie for you, Grace. They didn't make the movie specifically for you and mine. So next week we could find that like the resolution to all of this whole thing is really great. But what they set me up for was like, I'm going to fill the house with toxic gas and they're all going to die. And then the end of the episode, she takes off the mask and then wakes up Johnny's like, we got to talk, which it sets up like presumably the opening scene of next week or a scene we get very early on in the episode. But I was like, I'm just being a baby, Mike. I'm like, give me all the people dying from the give me all the people dying from the toxic gas.
Where's the asphyxiation?
Come on. It's like you told me you were doing it. And this is a show that has, does this have 8 or 10 episodes? Let me just double check.
This is 8. We're halfway through.
So yeah, I mean, I'll get it. I just didn't get it this week. And so I'm like, oh shucks. Oh, bummer.
I don't know. It does feel cathartic, though. And I think that's something that this episode builds up, is getting to see sort of the before and after of Sophia, seeing how she is regarded in the family. I mean, even look at the way her and her cousin, her cousin greets her so warmly in the past prior to her conviction, then compare that to Alberto's funeral, where she's like trying to awkwardly make conversation, but is trying to keep everyone near her at an arm's glance. To like Sophia coming in, I think what the episode did really well was build to that moment where she declares her own toast, realizing that like blood is blood, but her family has sold her out in multiple ways. And arguably, those are the people you can trust the most. For her, it's the least. And so, again, on the one hand, while I do enjoy the fact that she is, getting some more blood on her hands and becoming this role of the hangman, it is still done in a way that feels, I guess I'll say, heroic. That was one of my things, was like, okay, are we really building up Sophia as like the capital H hero here? And maybe it's more of a lowercase h, but it was very Kill Bill to me, of like, okay, she got justice on the people that wronged her. Her flesh and blood sent her away at the request of her father. Now it's time for her to get revenge. Also, like, I felt like a lot of these characters, quite honestly, except for Johnny Vitti, were pretty much nothing burgers. And so I was fine with just kind of like doing them away en masse to focus on maybe a couple of specific people.
I agree with that too. I'm not super attached to Milos. Even Luca, I'm kind of okay with Luca going. Certainly Johnny and Luca are the two people who you most suspect need to be taken care of at some point for Sophia to be successful, or for them to sort of disappear from the story so that they could come back if you ever did more of this. But the question of whether or not Sophia is the hero, I want to talk about this.
Yeah, let's
get
into this.
I want to talk about it from the thing that I've been thinking about this whole time, which is like, why did we make the Penguin show? And I've asked this. I think I asked this the first week. I'm like, why are we? And that's not that doesn't. I'm not actually meaning that to be rhetorical.
This isn't a Rob Cesternino. What are we doing here?
It's not. It's like what actually is. And I think that for me, this show so far, I think that I said, if like I have a scale of like amazing, very good, fine, it just keeps going down. I'm like a little below good. I'm like, I think there are times where I'm like, this show's very good, but like most of the time I'm like, oh, it's almost good. I think it's my like, that's kind of I think the acting is good. I think some of the writing is good, and I can't really tell you what is I'm feeling is not good, other than potentially a like, what are we doing? Because I'm resonating most with the theme of people who are underestimated and ultimately end up making a choice to try to overcome that, but in a way that is not actually how you probably would tell someone to. Like, it's like when these are all people doing crimes and murders. It's like not.
It's a little All About Eve, where it's like you are typecast into this role, but you're using that role to kind of get higher billing on the marquee.
Yeah. So let me ask, so we have not really launched James Gunn's DC universe yet. We're on the precipice of like that stuff. We still have, I think, Craven to come out, which I think is going to be completely unattached.
Well, that's also Marvel.
Sorry. What is there's a DC movie then that's coming out that I'm like, I keep going back and forth where it's like, is it not that it's going to be, I guess we just got Joker.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we have? Is there just Superman, I guess? Is that just Superman?
I think that's officially going to kick off the James Gunn version of the DCEU, is his version of Superman.
I kept thinking that there was something else that was like, basically they were like, this is coming out, but it's not really going to be part of the new DC world, but I could be totally wrong. So maybe I'm just wrong.
Well, I guess there is the Batman Part 2, which I guess is sort of a holdover from this, even though this is the, Batman, the Patman, if you will, is not
Uh-huh.
associated with like the Zack Snyder DC universe, so it kind of just exists on its own.
Yeah, definitely could have been thinking that. So that's okay. So I guess I say this to ask is like, we all feel the way we feel about Marvel right now as well. Feel like there was like a little bit of excitement with the Robert Downey Jr. announcement, but also some like, oh, like this is where we're going. Which I guess the question I have, Mike, is like, in this show, I think that like, am I wrong to think that we should be rooting for somebody? Should we be rooting for Oz? Should we be rooting for Sophia? Should we be rooting for both of them despite knowing they're probably the show will lead them to a path where they are on a collision course, or maybe it will subvert our expectations and they're not? And I think that one of the pieces that's hard is I don't go into every show thinking I need somebody to root for. And I'm actually somebody who I think like as long as a character is interesting, it's fine. Industry is the best example for this to me recently. There's not a lot of people who are supremely likable on that show, but they're interesting. In this, I do feel like in a super show, there's kind of a buy-in of like, I'm gonna root for someone. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
but in the Batman universe, which is regarded as having one of the best, sets of villains in the show's history. I mean, you talk about Joker, that is sort of what happened with the reaction to that first movie, right? Was like, oh, there's actually a good portion of the audience that resonates with Arthur and like wants to be him and understands him. And I'm not sure if that was Todd Phillips' purpose. And so from that perspective,
Yeah, he had to make another whole movie to be like, you all missed the point. You
yeah,
all didn't
but
get it. That was wrong.
to that point, like that's why I think that whether intentional or not, Oz is being kind of built up as maybe not the hero, but the protagonist of the Penguin. I think much like a Walter White, people are rooting for, okay, I want Oz to get out of this situation that he put himself in, right? Like, oh my God, he's boxed himself in right now. There's no way of escaping. I want him to escape. And I think that just comes from like being the protagonist of your own show. But I do think that Sophia coming in with such a tragic backstory, and again, from my perspective, carrying out like some of the most cathartic deaths the show has had so far, is kind of moving her up in those rankings of like, well, now I want to see her succeed because this is a position that was promised to her and she has been denied it so many times by so many people. I want to see her go full Beatrix Kiddo and take out everyone who's wronged her.
Yeah, I think I'm butting up a little bit against the idea that like I think that certainly shows should try to subvert the expectations. And if you're a good enough writer, you can break the formulas of television. But I think you have to you obviously have to understand them before you can break them. And this is a well trod world that we could presume that like they know what they're doing here. But I think that so then my question is like, is Sophia part of the ensemble of the show, or then is she the antagonist? If Oz is our protagonist,
Right.
is Sophia our antagonist? And
that's, I think, the interesting thing about it is that it kind of has been this pas de deux, this sort of like dance back and forth, where I think she is, because she is the main opposing force to the protagonist. And I don't think that necessarily says anything about her character, because again, and I don't think this is the case, like a lot of antagonists have certainly had episodes where like we find out about their tragic backstory. Who knows? Maybe she's going to go full Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender and like become an ally of Oz. But at least my perception of this story is that it's very much a cat and mouse game between these two equal opposing forces, especially at the end of this episode, where like their temporary alliance and rekindled friendship was not made to last. Now she knows, again, she is really on this revenge path now, assumingly is like officially the head of the Falcone family, and knows that Oz betrayed her directly. And so I do think that sets up the second half of the season more, which will be the two in stark opposition.
I mean, I can also see where this is the sort of counterpoint to basically how Batman interacts with like Gotham police. And like, Batman far predates at least the like sort of modern conversation that people have about police. So not that the way that police officers have acted for a long time has not been, people have not been saying that, but like there's a more modern conversation about police. But to say that like there is this like Batman's like, I'm gonna do this thing that you guys aren't willing to do. I'm not gonna kill anybody, but I will do all the stuff that you.
But I will put people in a lot of bodily harm that for all intents and purposes, should probably kill them.
I mean, that's kind of, I mean, for me, the end of the Batman is him being like, oops, maybe my reckless style of night vengeance is not doing as much good as I always think it does.
Yeah, the concept of vengeance can be weaponized, that if you feel wronged by somebody, it can make you do bad things and what you believe are good pursuits.
But in relation to Oz and Sophia, you kind of have like Batman and like Gotham and yeah, and so like this idea that like they're kind of both on the same, except for the ones who work there who are corrupt, but like Detective Gordon, like there's this like world in which like they're on the same side but are a little bit, they're not as confrontational, except for the times when like he's like, Batman, what the hell are you doing? You can't actually do that, you know? But I think so maybe this is the world that they're living in, which is that like there are these ways in which like they can kind of both be on the bad side of this world and still be like butting heads with each other, and you can have our protagonist in the Penguin and our antagonist in the Hangman. It does seem like the only way to get through that is for one of them to lose, maybe die.
Agree.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think it's a near impossibility that both of these characters survive the end of the series. Like, especially now that Sophia has proven she has the capability to like really callously kill somebody if she feels wronged by them. Again, she feels very, very wronged by Oz. In fact, she feels wronged by everybody. You know, we even see, and it's very interesting that, you know, the first scene we see out of flashbacks is her coming to in the home of Dr. Rush. And even that is sort of an example of someone who was personified to her as an ally, right? There was a guy who worked inside of Arkham who was the only person that was like, not necessarily in favor of her, but at least questioning, okay, should we be doing these radical treatments? Maybe she didn't do it. But she is now in this like hyper vigilant defensive stance now, where she's like, nobody's looking out for me. My brother was the only person who supported me wholly. He's dead. I was betrayed by my family, most namely my father. Oz was someone who I thought was a friend and I was also betrayed by. So then she turns on him and is basically like, oh yeah, thanks for taking me in, but like, let's be completely candid. This was for you more so than it was for me. You think you're the hero by like leaving Arkham, but you still stood by, you know, this evil doctor's side while he did these inhumane things to me. And so I think she is just on kind of a brazen warpath at this point to raise everything down and then hopefully build an inner circle that's maybe less accumulated through cooperation and friendship and more so through intimidation, which again, talking about the roles that you've kind of been put in is very interesting, because as much as she rebuffs the idea that she could be this killer like her father set her up to be, she is kind of becoming her father now. She's stepping into his shoes. And I wonder if it's something that she'll kind of learn, which is, hey, if you want to be the head here, heavy wears the head that wears the crown.
I actually want to talk about Dr. Rush for a minute, because I think that it is him who is kind of advocating for her, not enough that he can do anything about it.
He's just like, hey, should we not shock her this time? No? All right. I tried.
Turn down the dial a little bit. And then seemingly he does help get her out. But he also quit his job. And she calls him to see him for help when she's alone. It's the first person she calls. I want to talk about him because I wonder whether there's more to glean from him as a character and why is he in here? He could just be in here to be a person that she can go to. And she makes this statement at the end that I think is also very telling about who Sophia is, which is she says, they all think I'm broken. I'm not broken. I'm not the one who's sick, and neither are you. The world is.
Which feels something very the Batman to me. Like, that feels like the Riddler's entire MO, right? Which is like, I'm not corrupt. The entire system is corrupt, which is why I have to flood the city.
Right. So I say that knowing that he had this sort of like moral dilemma. He's watching her be shocked and he's like, maybe don't do that. And he doesn't do anything, but he does help her escape, seemingly, or get out of prison with Alberto. And that seems like a legit, like he like was like probably wrote the report or something. Like that seems like what it was.
Like he was the one that probably overwrote the other doctor. Cause again, it seemed like she was denied an appearance in court after the first 6 months because, like, no doctor would vouch for her, and it seemed like before he left, Rush was probably the one to rush into action, if you will, and be like, "No, no, no, she's fine. She's of sound mind and spirit. She can be let go."
And then there's the scene with them and she's kind of like saying like, yeah, it was really good for you to do it. And also, I think you actually found me very attractive. and maybe like and so I think there's this could be in here because he could be in there as the person who she can deliver this message to. And also the moment can come from a way where she thinks even the guy who probably has helped her the most other than her brother in this whole show is somebody who she thinks at least the only reason he's doing that is because he's attracted to her as well. So the only reason he wouldn't have done this for anybody. He's doing it for Sophia because he finds utility in her, that like maybe we'll be, like maybe we'll be together, like I guess like the darkest way you could look at it, but I do think it's in there. And so I'm wondering how much more you think we'll see Dr. Rush, and does he what is his role? Does he continue to help Sophia? Or the other thing is that he's a character who we think potentially generously has a moral compass. He did still actively participate in electroshock therapy. But is there a way in which like his moral compass is a thing that leads to the downfall of Sophia later on in the show?
It's a good question because I could see a world where like this is the wrap on the character because he serves as that final tether back to Arkham. Alberto's dead,
And
assumingly
says she deserves a fresh start, and she's going to be like,
right.
"Of course I do." And she's like, "That's about murdering my family."
Right, and so, like, that we are sort of done with the Arkham plot. We now sort of saw how she does end up becoming the Hangman and embraces this role when she kills Magpie, and so then it's, okay, she's officially done with the Arkham side of things, the backstory's done, past is in the past, now we're focusing on the present. On the other hand, from a trope perspective, I could see, like, one final check-in with him, maybe she ends
What do you
up
mean you killed your whole family? That's not what I meant by fresh start.
Oh, I say more so like maybe it's not necessarily one wins and one loses in the form of one dies. It's possible that Sophia could get sent back to Arkham. And then maybe she checks in with Dr. Rush there as sort of like a final appointment between the two. But I could also very realistically see that in a month, if we look back and we're like, yeah, we saw that psychiatrist twice and then he was done, that he's also served as, again, this representation of the tragic backstory she had and how that's informed the character she is today.
Is this why the DC writers just made Arkham? Like before they realized that they could just like reset universes, have multiverses, all this stuff, they just put the bad guy in jail, and then when we need him to come back, he broke out of jail. Like, is that exactly? Yeah, it must be exactly.
It's a very easy plot device of quite literally keep them behind bars, keep them on ice until we need them again, and then we could just say either they escaped it from prison or they, were able to pass through the shady legal system and were able to get out, and then they have their larks and then they go right back to jail again. Because remember, Batman doesn't kill people.
Right. My question about just to kind of finish on the Arkham stuff, you talk about you think that certainly could be a wrap, and I would actually agree. I don't know that we need to do more Arkham stuff.
Yeah, it felt again a little drawn out. I mean, again, I know they wanted to show like how much her spirit was broken, and it is interesting that we started getting answers as to like last episode, why did she wake up with claw marks on her neck? It's because she has these nightmares about like being hung herself.
Yeah.
But it did feel a little gratuitous at times, in my opinion. And I even feel this way about like some of the Westerosi shows as to like, okay, I know this is supposed to be a dark, depraved universe, but I don't know if you need to go that far. It was sort of weaning in that territory for me personally.
Yeah, here's the part that I struggle with, Mike, because I think sometimes I'm watching stuff and I'm like liking it, and also at the same time being like, you probably shouldn't like this. Which is that I feel like this like Arkham stuff is it definitely leans into like wild people with mental, which is like I don't know whether it's right or wrong or whatever, but I'm like I like it, and then also I'm like a little over the top, like both Magpie and the woman who
Old Forky,
the fork lady, little rough scenes, I think. Overall I don't mind like the themes of that scene of the like the fork getting we've seen it before, and this is the thing I was saying to Taryn a few weeks ago, Mike, and that to brag, Tim was like, I think it's a really good assessment, which is I do think the best shows on TV, even if they are innovating on something we've seen before. They're doing that. They're innovating and they feel really fresh. I think that the Penguin at times mostly feels like a version of the thing we've seen a lot of times. So the scene where it's like she's standing there and they give her the knife and she's like, I'm gonna kill them, and then she turns and sees the doctor. She's like, that's what you want me to do, and then she like gets attacked and then the fork drops and the lady kills herself. Like, I don't think I've seen exactly like that, but I don't think that feels so new. I think I've seen stuff like that before. It's still a well done version. I think Kristen Milotti was really great in this episode.
Really,
but
have you seen some of the discourse going around, Grace, about Kristen Milioti?
No, I have not. Sorry, I mispronounced her
Well,
name.
there was
not
like
loving her performance.
No, people are loving it to the point where
Okay.
there was like a tweet that said like, I've been a real one. I've been supporting Kristen Milioti since Palm Springs, and a lot of people were like,
since Palm Springs.
That's the thing. It's like saying, oh, I'm a Tom Cruise fan and I've been loving him since Mission Impossible Fallout. Like, that was only 5 years ago when she's done so many other things. I mean, listen, if I want to tell my own Kristen Milioti love, I've been writing for her since I saw her in Once over a decade ago on Broadway. Like,
cool.
Listen, I'm just happy that there are fans to begin with, because I think she is so good. And I think if anyone were to get nominated for a performance Emmy from this show, it would be her. I do think maybe it's just because the field is so deep, or like maybe the show isn't like as pervasive as maybe DC thought it would be, but like there might be a nomination for Colin Farrell if the pool is shallow enough. But I feel like a lot of people are going to be walking away with like big feelings about Kristen Milioti, and it helps that they are giving the character of Sophia so much to work with.
I agree. I think my Kristen Milioti thing is probably, unsurprisingly, How I Met Your Mother. I think that's I think
How
probably
I Met Your Mother, or like
the she was in The Sopranos, but like
or USS Callister from Black Mirror. She's like one of the centerpieces there.
That's true. Yeah. But gosh, that's so funny that it's Palm Springs, as people are saying. That's so funny. No, I agree. I think she's been quite phenomenal. I mean, I think Colin Farrell's been good, but I think you don't typically, like, other than basically people who play the Joker, you don't really get nominated for this type of role.
And I think that Colin Farrell had a really good scene last episode in the bathroom with Vic. I think that was a really nice way to like see Oz for who he really is. But they gave Sophia so many opportunities in this episode, between obviously like the pure abject fright that Sophia has as she's thrown into Arkham wrongfully so, to like the eventual breaking of her spirit, that I think would be interesting to now look back on like episodes 1 and 2 and see like the way that she goes through things now that we know how much her spirit was broken from like being a person of sound mind and spirit to what she is now, what that meant. And then obviously that toast as well, where she basically just hijacks Luca's boring toast to say, yeah, F you all, I won't forget about you. You may think that I'm going, but I'm staying for a very, very different reason. So what do you make about, I know that you sort of could take or leave the entire, mass murder of the family, but like the
No. I'll take it. But we didn't see it happen. That's
the thing. You wanted the gratuitousness of it.
I want it to be in this episode. I wanted the whole, but like it didn't happen. She then takes off the mask and then wakes up Johnny. That's what I'm. It's the frame. It's where we set the cliffhanger that I'm.
Yeah, but what I find interesting is her choice to spare the life of the little girl of Gia. In that, yes, you could say on the one hand, we saw several traumatic flashbacks to her finding her mother hanging, which then allows her to kind of put the pieces together to realize that maybe it was not a self-inflicted death, and her wanting to basically say like, let's not continue the cycle. On the other hand, she did kill her mother. And so is she not just becoming Carmine in so many ways?
Yeah, I love it. I love this thing of like, protecting her. It's her cousin's daughter, right?
It's her cousin's daughter, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's like not too coincidental that she looks a lot like the young Sophia that we see in the flashbacks a couple times.
I mean, yeah, I liked it. Again, I'm a little, like, it feels like at the beginning I'm like asking this question about like, who's the hero, who's the villain? Like, I think it is pretty obvious, but I still am like wanting to talk it through, because the show is choosing to depict both our I guess not hero, but like you're right, say protagonist and antagonist, that there are shades of gray about why they end up being who they are. So this, I think, fits in perfectly to this, that it basically Sophia just is going to wrong the people who wronged her, and this girl that has not obviously wronged her in any way. She's still
In
doing
fact,
a
she
pretty bad thing.
loves her meatball routine at the dinner
That's right.
table.
Really great. Yeah, I actually loved it.
I also love that as well, that she just like picks up the meatballs with her bare hands, does not
Yeah,
give
yeah,
an
yeah.
F because she knows in a few hours you'll basically all be dead.
Yes, this is true. And also very relatable. I will do almost anything to make a child laugh. I will, like, all my nieces, they have seen me try many bits. I've probably done the meatball bit before. But I like this moment of like her, bringing her cousin's daughter out. Not, she's still gonna murder her mom, but
See, that's the thing, is like I understand that maybe she's prolonging the end of innocence. At the same time, is this girl not going to have a very similar moment to seeing her mom gassed in a bed the same way that she did with her own mother?
Yeah, and so I mean, like, a very common thing that we see in movies and TV is the villain having a redemption moment before, if Sophia's to die this season, like, you could see, like, this is, classic Darth Vader, like probably the greatest movie villain of all time, has a moment of being like, "Ah, son," It's like, so like you could see the moment where like Sophia realizes that she's doing just as much harm as was caused to her by going down this path, and then therefore is like, before she dies, is like, oh no," or
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, what's interesting is that Sophia is really undergoing a baptism by blood here. And
Baptism.
yeah, I mean, baptism by blood, exactly.
Mhm.
Like, but that's the thing as well, is that almost like Batman Begins, right? Where like he names himself after the thing that he feared the most. Sophia, which was someone who, again, for a long time put up this idea of like, I did not kill anybody, I wouldn't be the person to do that. Clearly, in the first couple episodes, she didn't directly kill people, but like very easily ordered her goons to do so. And here, as she says in her speech, tomorrow I'm starting a new life. For the first time, I have hope. And so I truly do think that like something has broken within her. I think really being betrayed by Oz was the last straw. Basically, I'm assuming she's connected the dots now to assume that Oz had killed Alberto. And so for her, it's this idea of like, yep, tabula rasa. I just got to build again from scratch. So I am quite literally starting a new life here. Sophia is dead. The hangman lives.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it basically comes out in the thing where like Oz doesn't like probably do a good enough job of denying that he killed Alberto for her to think that he did not kill Alberto. So
So what did you think about the recognition of like how Oz betrayed Sophia? It felt like they were trying to kind of really walk the middle area of Oz does sell Sophia out to Carmine, and maybe it was for selfish motivations, but like he clearly did not intend to do it for her to get put away in Arkham. I think he more so maybe looked at it as a way to like worm his way within the organization while simultaneously maybe I've got the inside track. Let me exploit that information. But at least from Colin Farrell's performance as she's getting arrested, it was definitely made to seem like he had some remorse for what happened to her, which he does express in the previous episode.
yeah, I think that there's probably ways in which like, and it's a characterization of Oz that I really like, which is that he sometimes does things that will benefit him, that he knows he's doing it to benefit them, but does not realize how he's like screwing over other people or like
Mm-hmm.
putting them. So like, I think this is a really good example of the way that Oz can both know that he told Carmine, probably for some of the reasons that Sophia's saying, of like, he's gonna look like, now you have his, like, you're his boy, which like is also bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in this world, I think that's what she's saying. It's like, okay, they're all gonna watch you now because like you're in now. That's how I read that. And so he can feel like that was a good move for him to be like, tell Carmine to like be like trusted, and then also feel like, oh, but I did not think a father would put his daughter away. And so he kind of, I think I actually give him the benefit of that I feel like that is not malicious. That is like, Oz has this, like, I don't think he's malicious. I think he has a level of like, if he's a D&D character, I'd make his intelligence a little low, or maybe his wisdom. I don't know which one, Mike.
Yeah, I'd
Probably
say
his
wisdom because
wisdom.
she's more street smart than book smart.
So yeah, so I think that and so I think that this, when when he's, even when he's like pleading to the Maronis, he's doing that in a way where he could go back to Sophia and be like, Of course, that's what I had to tell her.
Right,
Of course,
exactly.
in that moment,
I had to save our lives. They had guns pointed at us. I'm gonna say anything I need to get the Maronis off us so we could do what we're actually trying to do here.
Which I think maybe to go back to like, oh, Sophia and Oz are back together. Like maybe it probably feels a little like we're wheel spinning before the end of the season, but I don't know. The show does seem to like move forward in a way that I don't think it often like what I thought might have been like a full season arc has ended up being like often like an episode and a half at most. So like, I think that there's a world where Oz and Sophia at least meet and are not like the next time they meet is not a time where both of them get killed or one of them gets killed, I think at least.
No, I mean, I think we're gonna get one more moment of like not reconciliation, but almost the two of them remembering, kind of like spoiler alert for The Wire, a little bit of like the final moments of Avon and Stringer Bell,
Right.
when it's like remember the good times, because they
Right.
carried on a very good relationship from those first couple of flashback scenes that we
Mhm.
saw. But to your point, I think it is classic Oz, especially a decade ago when he's a bit more youthful, a bit more ambitious, like not looking before he leaps, almost not looking behind him before he leaps, where he does this thing to get ahead, but then Sophia tells him, like, congratulations, you got what you wanted. My father sees you now. You and everyone you love is on his radar. And so she's basically warning him, like, yeah, the closer you get to Carmine, actually, the more that you're under his control. And as you're about to see, like, he's willing to sell out his own daughter for possibly putting his image at risk. You, while getting like a seat closer to the throne, have put yourself much, much more in danger and being more visible to him.
And the more that you show who you are, it's useful as long as you're useful. So you ratting out Sophia that she met with the photographer is useful for me in this moment. And if you continue to be loyal to me, but the moment it actually doesn't seem like you're loyal to me, you're so dead. You're absolutely so dead.
Yeah,
So.
the second that he feels either you are of no purpose or you're actually working against his purpose, then he will discard you. Again, he sent his own daughter, the heir to his empire, away in like one fell swoop because he thought, oh, you're not supposed to be like this. Also, a couple of other like fun canon shout outs here. Summer Gleason, who I'm a big fan of Batman the Animated Series. She showed up a lot there. I think people who are fans of the Keaton Batman might recognize like Vicky Vale as maybe the bigger Gotham News personality, but Summer Gleason, I think, was more of a mainstay from the universe that I'm used to.
I did so much Googling this episode, Mike, to be like, Magpie, Batman villain. It's like trying everybody who showed up this episode. I was like, are they a person that I could know more about?
I mean, what's interesting is, and maybe it's just because of present movies on the brain, but like when I hear this kind of squeaky New York voice behind the pipe, I was thinking, oh, are we doing this?
I wondered the same thing. I thought the same thing. We did the draft of like what other DC character could show up here, and that's I definitely thought it was that, and then it was not. Her name was Magpie, who seemingly I can't find a character named Magpie. If you do,
there's a character named Magpie. Basically, like it's like much like Catwoman. She's just like a recurring burglar who's much like a magpie bird. Their thing is like they're attracted to shiny things, and so they'll filch things from people. Like she is a CD level villain, I would say. So I think again they were trying to incorporate it in there. I mean that's the interesting thing, Grace. I have this on the brain because we actually talked about this on TV for real. And I talked about it in the rearview mirror of Velma getting canceled. That it does seem like modern day creators kind of have to operate sometimes out of a lens of, okay, I want to make this story. I want to make this show. But the only thing that will get me in the room is if I link it with a popular IP. Like, for example, Velma, a lot of Scooby-Doo fans, and there are people out there like very much disparaged the show because they felt like it wasn't a Scooby-Doo show. It was just like an adult animated series that Mindy Kaling wanted to make. But arguably it wouldn't have been made unless it was linked with a popular IP like Scooby-Doo. All these connections be damned. It does make me wonder sometimes, like, does this feel like a series set in the universe of the Batman? Is this just a mafia series that could have worked if you changed the names just as fine, and you don't need any sort of these canonical tie-ins that we saw in Matt Reeves' film?
Yeah, I don't know. So far, I like the depiction of Gotham in this, and the thing I think that they're doing well is, I think if you watched the Batman before you started watching the Penguin, but if you like we're watching that and then we're binge watching it, I do feel like it probably does feel cohesive, but basically just that it's like, oh, it's that Gotham, and some of the stuff of like the eye drops and like
Yeah,
that.
I'm glad we got that stuff. Like last episode, again, one of the reasons why I loved it is I feel like we did get a lot of that world building. And I guess we got that here too in the form of like getting to see how depraved Arkham was in this version.
Mm-hmm. The IP thing is interesting. I talked about this on the Tastemakers one week, but one example that showed why corporation, like organization, studios, whatever, are so drawn to IP was, and it was like this. It was a playwright, an author named John O'Farrell, who wrote a musical called Something Rotten.
Yes, I love that.
Okay, it was successful, but it did not make a ton of money. Something Rotten
Right.
is I guess like and so John O'Farrell had written this. It was critically acclaimed, nominated for Best Musical for a Tony
Yep.
Award.
It was very good. It's basically like a modern day version of The Producers. It's very meta, a
Yeah.
big, great musical comedy
But
with completely original music set in Shakespearean times.
right. So John O'Farrell wrote that based on, I think it is. Is it based on? No, it's not based. He just wrote it.
It's completely
And
original, yeah.
yeah, and so it critically did really well, but it didn't make that much money. It had been like, went all over. Like I think it's even 2024. It's playing in the West End. He then got asked if he would write another musical, but this time based on IP. And I can't remember what he was offered before something else. And then they said, well, okay, if you don't want to do that one, what about Mrs. Doubtfire? He said, yeah, I'll do that. So he is the writer of the Mrs. Doubtfire musical, which has been very successful, and he has made a lot of money off of. And the reason that they say that, which is a very Broadway specific thing, or even a West End thing, is that like tourists come and they look at all the shows that are playing on Broadway and they see Something Rotten and they see Mrs. Doubtfire. And they're like, well, I know Mrs. Doubtfire, so I'm going to go see Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, yeah, Grace. I could do an entire other podcast, about like the state of musical theater and how, tough it is. And these adaptations are not like something that's so entirely emblematic of nowadays. Like this is something that's been part of the community for decades upon decades. Just a matter of sometimes to keep a show afloat, you got to get butts in chairs. And sometimes it's taking these movies, TV shows, the jukebox musicals, the song of insert artists here, and you gotta put butts in chairs over making something that feels truly unique. That's why something like Hamilton was so interesting, right? Because yes, it is technically based on somebody's life, but it was so quite literally revolutionary that a show could be so successful in so many ways due to the fact that it wasn't based on like a pre-existing pop culture property.
Yeah, so the point here is that I think that like you can sort of see this in all of our other forms of entertainment. Like there really is this prevalence of this, of like this got greenlit because you can the HBO is thinking someone on their couch would be like looking through what they're going to watch, and on their Max app it's like, oh, the Penguin, that's the Penguin from Batman, and I click on it, and like I don't know, there's a way in which like that's like a very cynical thing. I don't think we're getting away from it. I do think like if you can find people who like are wrapping up their stories in this in this IP framework, that's okay. There's will always be, I think, like independent and smaller media being made, but I look at the HBO lineup and I'm like pretty excited for it, Mike, and also a little bit scared that I'm going to be like franchise I'm gonna get franchise fatigue.
Well, the franchise is coming up after this.
Well, yes, the franchise debuted last week.
Oh, it did. Okay, how was it? Did you watch it?
I've watched a bit of the first episode. I didn't think it was incredible, but I would be excited to watch more. I think generally people feel like it doesn't have a lot of teeth, but in addition to that, you have The Last of Us season 2, which there is good versions of franchise stuff as well. But
yeah, that's the thing we've talked about certainly a lot when you and I covered The Last of Us, was like the power of adaptation, where you're able to take the skeleton of something, but then also build in so many other different musculatures and organs, and tell stories that you weren't able to tell with the initial source material. There's that. And then there is sort of like kind of what they did / are doing with something like The Witcher, where it's like, okay, we're loosely basing it off the source material, but it's basically to tell our own stories with characters with the same names.
Can I give you, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dramas listed under the upcoming programming for HBO. Can I list them for you, Mike?
Yes, please.
Dune Prophecy, based on IP.
Based on IP.
A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, House of the Dragon IP. Game of Thrones IP. It, Welcome to Derry.
Based on IP.
Lanterns. based on IP. It's Green Lantern, I believe, right?
What? Why?
I believe that's true. Someone tell me I'm wrong, but I believe that's true. There's an untitled Mark Ruffalo Task Force drama, so that doesn't seem to be IP unless it's based on something. So not. And then the last one, Mike, is the untitled Harry Potter series.
Oh, yep, based on an IP and then some.
So 5 of 6 of their upcoming drama programs. They also have The White Lotus, Euphoria. What you? Yeah,
I mean,
they have,
you mentioned industry, of course, Succession.
Yeah, they have stuff. They have stuff, but they're doing a lot. They're looking down the pipe and being like, we got to get the IP stuff. So this is not going away, but it is interesting. It's an interesting conversation. Why they're doing it? I think it's why they're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Again, I don't want to necessarily dedicate the end of this podcast with like a rebuke about the state of the industry. I just find it interesting that like, looking back, we're now halfway through The Penguin. I am largely enjoying it. I think there are, especially these past 2 episodes, it really has ramped up my feelings on this, that it just went from sort of like generic mafia show to an interesting character study that, for good reasons, I don't necessarily know where it's going to go next. But it does also have me looking ahead to say, how is this going to link back to the IP that it is technically under as well? And maybe it won't, maybe it will be significantly detached from everything and we won't necessarily get the cameos that we thought. But I thought as a halftime measure, it would be interesting to kind of check in with this and maybe what it says, to your point, about sort of the state of things and how maybe sometimes what you need to get your foot in the door is an association with a familiar character.
So Lanterns is Green Lantern. It is going to be.
Why?
I have great news for you. It is going to be starring Aaron Pierre, who I think is on the verge of a breakout. He's going to be in both Mufasa and The Morning Show as well. He's going to be in that as well. He's been in The Underground Railroad. He's in there's a Canadian film called Brother, which is really good. He was in Old. Rebel Ridge just came out on Netflix. He's the star of that. So he is going to be John Stewart, aka Green Lantern. And they've also cast Kyle Chandler. Mike. So that's the Lanterns cast so far. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You don't need to. And there another episode I thought was pretty good. I think I was watching this episode the whole time being like, this is pretty good. This is good.
I think it sets up a very exciting second half. Maybe it's because we kind of have killed off more of the rank and file of the Falcons. I mean, she did purposely keep Johnny VT alive. We saw that was the room on the window that she raised up purposely to not completely gas him. So clearly she is trying to use him. Because yeah, I did feel a little odd about like, okay, well, with Luca dead, I guess the entire blackmail, VT was sleeping with Luca's wife thing is done now. But I guess VT still kind of plays a purpose on it, which makes me sad because I was so excited that I thought, yeah, I put VT as part of my death draft, and he is the only person to survive the gassing for now. But it seems like she's going to utilize him, probably use him as sort of a consigliere in the way that he was before with Luca. But what is very fun and propulsive is the fact that I'm assuming she now has all eyes on Oz. Whereas in the first couple of episodes, yes, there was that scene where she took him in at the end of the premiere, but like otherwise they've kind of been tiptoeing around one another. She's out for blood this time. And I'm excited to pick up on the other end of, the car speeding away to see what Vic and Oz are getting into and how they're going to shore up their side for what's to come.
It's so strange. Like, it's so easy to find Oz. It's so easy. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, you just go to HBO Max and all 3-4 seasons are available.
Or, this is a great joke. I was going to say you follow the Yellow Brick Road.
Oh, there we go as well.
Okay, great. We got both. We got 2 puns. We each had a different pun. That's great. All right. That's episode 4 of The Penguin. Mike, quickly, what else you get going on?
Yeah, so a couple fun things I'll pimp out through scripted. Of course, the usual stuff with TV for real. But also, Chappelle has watched all of Lost.
Wow.
Grace. He got the reference at the beginning of this podcast about Benjamin Linus. And so Josh and I had to check in with him before we move permanently onto BSG to get his thoughts on everything he thought about the series. It's a very fun time. Yes, he may say some things that you might disagree with, but it was a very great time overall. We asked him questions. He asked us questions. Check that out over on Down the Hatch. And I also had the privilege of appearing on the weekend program with Josh and Antonio this week. Grace talked Treehouse of Horror. Of course, The Simpsons is one of my favorite shows of all time. I curated a list of an unlucky 13 Treehouse of Horror segments to watch from over the years, and we talk through them all. So be sure to check that out. And then my usual reality TV stuff. I'll see people next week at the New York live event for RHAP, hopefully. If that's the case and you're watching The Penguin, talk to me about your thoughts now that we're sort of checking in halfway through. Otherwise, you can check out everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom Type.
Yeah, I'm on social media at Hi from Grace. Just doing the usual. Tara and I talking the tastemakers, where we watch everything and tell you what you should and should not watch. All the other shows, Mike wrapped up. Brings of Power and Industry are wrapped up. So see what comes next. For now, it's just you and I hanging out in Gotham. Yeah,
there we go. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it.
All right. We'll be back next week with another recap of The Penguin. Until then, bye bye. Wah, wah.